it's actually in your best interest to be on a successful, high-performing.
Hey, I'm Dr. Joey Fawcett back with you on the Work Positive podcast, coaching you to grow people and profits by creating a positive work culture. So let me ask you this question. Do you bring your whole self to work? How does your company culture encourage you to do that? Or does it discourage you from doing so? Just get your work done, nothing more, nothing less. I'm so sorry if that's where you find yourself right now. After all, at the end of the day, we're all in this together, right? My guest today is a leading expert on leadership, teamwork, and culture. He's helped some of the world's top organizations like Google, Microsoft, Wells Fargo, and the NBA create environments where people perform at their best because they feel safe, valued, and connected. And he's done it for more than 2 decades. He's the author of 5 books, including the bestsellers We're All in This Together and Bring Your Whole Self to Work. He's been featured in Harvard Business Review, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal. He combines data, story, and soul to help leaders strengthen trust, collaboration, and authenticity within their teams. He's spoken in 17 countries across 4 continents and is the host of the podcast We're All in This Together. His 3 TEDx talks have almost 2.5 million views. So bring your whole self to this podcast because we truly are all in this together, Work Positive Nation. Well, here he is. That's right. Mike Robbins is in the house, Work Positive Nation. Mike, I am so stoked to have you on. Thanks for taking time out from a busy schedule to hang out with us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, me too. So here we are out there today, and we want to bring our whole selves to work. And there's some boss saying, just get your work done. Nothing more, nothing less. How in the world do we respond to that?
Well, look, it's tough. I mean, there's a lot of stuff coming at people from all directions, especially these days. But, I've been doing this work for 25 years. And when I talk to people who are the happiest and most engaged and most effective in wherever they work, big company, small company, public sector, private sector, there's some ability for them to be themselves and to connect with the other humans that they work with. It's not to oversimplify it, but if we can create an environment like that, people usually thrive.
They do, don't they? So you've been doing it for 25 years. Every superhero like you, Mike Robbins, has an origin story. How'd you get started in this line of work?
Well, I grew up here in California where I still live, and I was a baseball player as a kid, loved it, was passionate about it, got drafted out of high school by the New York Yankees. Didn't end up signing with the Yankees at that time because I got an opportunity to play baseball in college at Stanford, which was about an hour from where I grew up in Oakland, in California, and played at Stanford. Got to pitch in the College World Series, which was a lot of fun, and then got drafted by the Kansas City Royals out of Stanford and signed a pro contract. And, as it works in baseball, you got to go into the minor leagues, even when you get, drafted and signed with a major league team. So I'm working my way up, trying to get to the big leagues. Unfortunately for me, my 3rd season still in the minors, I went out to pitch one night. Was pitching in the Carolina League against the Durham Bulls, as you and I were talking about before we hit record.
Go Bulls.
Threw one pitch, tore ligaments in my elbow, blew my arm out. And, 2 years, 3 surgeries later, had to retire from baseball, was super disappointed, as you can imagine.
Man, yeah.
And didn't really know what the heck I was going to do with the rest of my life. I mean, I'd gotten an education, but hadn't really thought about work outside of baseball, quite frankly. Yeah. Get a job in the late 90s out here in California during the sort of, internet boom. I'm in sales. I figured the business world, the tech world, the sales world would be really different than the sports world, and it was. But when I got that very first job, Joey, I realized one of the things I'd been fascinated by as an athlete was it wasn't always the best players that made the best teams, right? Like you needed some talent, but sometimes I was on teams with tons of talent, but lots of egos and weird coaching and just bad chemistry, and we would underperform. And then I was on other teams with great coach, great group of guys. We really cared about each other. We rooted for each other, and the chemistry of the team would propel us to be better. I erroneously, at that young age of my life, thought that was a sports thing. And then I get my first job and I realized, oh no, that's a human thing. And worked for a couple tech companies just for a few years. .com bubble bursts. I lose my job. And I decide at a pretty young age, a mentor of mine says to me, if you could do anything, what would you do? And I said, well, anything. I said, tell my story and try to speak and inspire people, coach people to create, positive teams and positive environments. And he's like,
Mm.
good, you should do that now. And I'm like, now? I was like, is that a job? Like, I'm 26. I don't know. Like,
Do
how am I
that?
supposed to do that? But that's what got me started 25 years ago, was just, a curiosity and an interest that I had in people and in team chemistry that then has led me to, write a few books and do some research and get a chance to talk to a lot of teams and leaders across the country in lots of different environments.
Wow. And somebody besides your mom has definitely read your books, because you got two of them that hit the bestseller status. And by the way,
Yeah.
those we got links to those in the show notes. We're all in this together. Bring your whole self to work. Man, you're talking about teams. We're all in this together. Must be about some spectacular teams that you've been on that, I mean, they're kind of bumblebee teams. They aren't supposed to fly, but yet they
Right.
overachieve and greatly outkick, right, the
Yep.
coverage. What are some of those qualities of teams?
Well, look, I think at some level, teams that really thrive, first and foremost, there's some level of care about each other and the work,
Mm,
right? Again, we don't all have to be best friends. We don't all have to
yeah.
have the same beliefs and values about things, but there's some level of like, we care about each other. So like if you and I
Mm,
are teammates, we care about each other
hmm.
as humans,
Hmm.
and we care about what we're doing. We're trying
Yeah.
to accomplish something that actually matters to us. Because if we don't care about each other and or we don't care about what we're doing, it's going to be hard for us to individually and collectively succeed. But
Mm.
if we do care about each other and we are committed to whatever we're trying to accomplish, it's not a guarantee that we're going to succeed, but like now we got a chance. So that's sort of the first
We stand a
stage is
fighting
like,
chance, right?
yeah.
So how do you teach somebody to care, Mike, who primarily cares about themselves? The classic narcissist on a team. And hey, we've all served with them. You were talking about
Sure.
some ego-driven folks that you were on
Yeah.
teams with. How do we, I mean, can you even coach up somebody like that to care?
Well, look, at some level, I believe, look, I'm an optimist. And
Yeah.
even the most difficult, challenging, selfish, narcissistic human, most people want to succeed. Most people want to be in an environment that's positive, that's conducive to their own success. So I will often say to people, look, let's just say you're super selfish and you literally don't care about anyone around you. You just want to win yourself. You just want to succeed. You just want to make money, fill in the blank, whatever the goal is, right?
Hmm.
It's actually in your best interest to be on a successful, high performing team, because being on a winning team makes you better. I use the example in sports. Again, take any sport. You take two athletes. Let's say you and I are both, basketball players. We're both whatever sport it is, football players, baseball players. If we have the same talent, the same ability, the same, but let's say you're on a championship team
Mm.
and I'm on a mediocre team. When our contracts are up for renewal, when we're out in the free agent market, when we're looking like
That's right.
who's going to get paid more, you're going to get paid more
Uh-huh.
because they go, hey, Joey knows how to win. He's been on a championship
Mm.
team. This guy, Mike, has only been on mediocre teams. So it's less about our individual talent and performance, and it's more about and that's true in the business world. You work for a successful company or even a successful department within the company, it raises and elevates your own brand, your own value. So there's personal, selfish value to being on a successful team. And look, even the best team players do have their own individual goals and ambitions and
Mm.
desires. They want to succeed, and that's okay as
Hmm.
long as we're not putting our own individual interests and goals above the goals of the team,
Yeah.
then we're going to be okay.
Man, that is so insightful, because what we're talking about is, in order for me to win, you don't have to lose.
Right.
We can all
Right.
win together, and then that rising tide of positivity just lifts the whole ship. And who doesn't want to be on a winning team?
Right.
We
Well,
all do.
and for most of the people listening to us, watching us right now, like we've all been around environments, even if it was competitive or challenging, or we weren't quite, we had that imposter syndrome, like, do I belong here?
Yeah,
Am I good
yeah,
enough to be on this
yeah.
team?
Wow.
That it challenges us. It kind of pulls us forward, and when people around us are succeeding and people around us are, again, it doesn't have to be that we all hold hands and sing Kumbaya and we're best friends with each other,
Yes.
right? People often say to me, I come in to speak or I come in to do it. We're not going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya.
Well,
I say,
let's
listen,
face it, you're from
we're not.
California, so they're
Right.
expecting something woo-woo,
Exactly.
right?
But I will say, I always say, look, we're not going to do that. We're not doing trust falls. We're not doing Kumbaya circles. And I was like, but I tell you what, if you get a group of human beings that would be comfortable enough holding hands and singing Kumbaya, that's probably a pretty strong team, I would guess.
That's what I'm talking about, man. Let's at least light a campfire and sit around it, right?
Yeah.
Why
And the thing,
wouldn't
Joe, but the practical part of this, though, Joe, I would say is that and this is a challenge for a lot of leaders and a lot of teams today because of so many factors. But the challenge is like, how do we unlock people? And how do you get past some of people's defensiveness or their selfishness or their cynicism or right? And again, some people without malicious intent, the world has been how it's been in the last several years and decades.
Oh.
You would understand why people are looking out for themselves and saying, hey, I may really like my boss or my company or what I'm doing, but I can't trust that I'm safe here. So I got to just look out for number one. And so the challenge for a lot of leaders that I work with these days in teams is like, hey, can we figure out how to unlock people's potential? Can we assume positive intent? And can we raise the bar in terms of positivity, which I know you talk about, knowing that we do live in a world that's uncertain, especially right now.
Yeah, man, you're reminding me of my conversations with Dr. Bob Johansen, Mike, around the VUCA world, the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguity. So how do we as people leaders do that? How do we unlock that potential and help people bring their whole selves to work? We're talking about caring. Okay, that's the first thing. What are some other keys to really unlocking all that potential?
Well, another piece of it is, I think, a deep level of authenticity. And look, part of what great leaders have to do today is acknowledge the VUCA you're talking about, acknowledge that things are volatile, that things are uncertain, that there is complexity and ambiguity. And again, that's just the nature of life right now. And sometimes I see really well-intentioned leaders who want to create a positive work environment, but they unintentionally do something really damaging, which is they try to minimize people's fear or their stress. One of my favorite sayings, Joe, is that in the history of calming down, no one has ever calmed down by being told to calm down, right?
Yeah, it's like being with a kid who's screaming at the top of their lungs, and you think you're going to get them to hush by yelling over them. No, man,
Right.
You get right in that 5-year-old's ear, and this is for real with my granddaughter, and I whisper, use your inside voice. Right?
Yeah.
And then what happens?
Some version of being able to meet the moment, right? And again, hopefully we're not all throwing tantrums like young children, but sometimes people get scared, they get stressed. And I think a lot of leaders that I work with will say, oh, well, they just need to relax or calm down or stop worrying about these things. And I'm like, okay, yes. And you can't talk someone out of their fear. You got to be able to meet that. And so being able to acknowledge, hey, look, yes, things are stressful, or there's a lot of uncertainty, or I don't know exactly what's happening, or we're not sure how artificial intelligence is going to impact what we do in a month, in 6 months, in a year, in 5 years, but we do know what we're dealing with today. And can we meet the moment right now?
Yeah. And Mike, oh, by the way, Amazon just laid off 14,000 people, right?
I know.
So just telling somebody, don't worry about that, does not work. A business owner that I have the privilege of coaching right now, working with their company, he's got a young mother returning to work, right? Baby went through NICU, so they got all these NICU bills, and her husband just got laid off.
Oof.
And I know. So, the owner leader is talking to me about how to best reach out to her. And we talked about this very thing. Her fear is real.
Yeah.
So to your point of authenticity, can we just say that's scary
Yeah.
and identify with somebody and just be really transparent about it?
Yeah. And I think sometimes there's like a friend of mine years ago wrote a book called There's No Good Card for This. And what she was talking about was basically like there are situations that come up in life. Like the origin story of the book was she was in college, and I think it was one of her friends actually got diagnosed with cancer. And here they were, 20 years old. And she's like, I wasn't prepared for this. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do.
Mm.
And then she realized, and when she wrote the book, she was in her 40s, but she said there's a lot of things that come up in life, whether it's at work or just in our lives personally. We don't always know what to say or we don't know how to respond. And I think what we've seen, especially the last 5 or 6 years going through the pandemic and so many things, and people, both for better on the side of people feel safer to share more of what's going on in their personal lives at work. But the side of it that makes it more challenging is I talk to a lot of leaders and managers who say to me, I don't know what to do. Like they're, and I said, look, you don't have to be a psychologist. You don't have to be some kind of expert. It's like if they came in
Right.
with a broken leg and said, what do I do about my leg? You would say, go to the doctor, right? You wouldn't try to address the, right? So
That's great.
if someone's dealing with a real, what seems like a mental health
Mm.
situation, I know it's sensitive, but you can encourage them. Like it's okay to get help or get support for that. But in general, it's also okay, I think, sometimes as a leader, just to acknowledge that sounds hard, or I don't really know what to say, or
Mm.
even one of my favorite questions that we can ask other human beings, whether it's because we're the boss and they report to us, or it's a coworker, it's a friend, it's what does support look like for you right now?
Oh, I love that question. Yeah.
And then you just let them tell you. And
Mm.
that doesn't mean you have to do what they ask, but let
Mm.
them tell you what support looks like for them right now.
Mm.
And it could be because they're struggling on a project, or it could be because they have a personal thing going on outside of work that's difficult, or whatever. Like, how can I
Mhm.
show up to support you best? And
Mm.
trust that people will tell us what they need, and
Mm.
then we can respond accordingly.
But Mike, you got to ask the question, man.
Right,
So often as people leaders, we just assume we can throw money at something.
right,
Like, let's give everybody a raise, give everybody a big bonus. And then nobody says thank you.
right.
And you kind of wandering around like, well, I didn't appreciate that. I'm not giving them a bonus again. When in fact, you start asking this question and it's like, well, you could let me come in at 6:30 so I can get off early and pick my kid up from school because,
Right.
her dad and I are separated and I really want to pick her up from school.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what support looks like to her. So let people define it. So when that happens, man, I begin to realize I can bring my whole self to work.
exactly. Another thing that leaders can do in that regard is you can ask the question, what does support look like? But I also love to encourage people, and some of the leaders that I coach, is talk to the people who report to you and ask them, what could I do to motivate and inspire you best? Like if I want to get the best,
Mm.
like tell me what really motivates you, what inspires you. And the other side
Mhm.
of that question though is what can I do to really irritate you and piss you off? Not that I want to, but I need to know if there's certain things we do with good intention that we don't
Uh,
realize are irritating other
I
people or
know.
demotivating them.
Yeah.
And again, we think everyone wants to be motivated and managed the way that we do, and that's not
Yes.
true.
Yes. No. It's the ultimate narcissism, right? To assume that everybody's love language, everybody's appreciation language, or
Right.
whatever is like me. That was
Right.
an early realization in my own marriage that really helped propel me to working with
Yep.
people leaders. I'm an extrovert. My wife's introverted. It
Yep.
came to be a significant birthday, probably like 30 or something. And so I invited everybody we'd met at the grocery store, everybody we'd met everywhere. The more the merrier. And so afterwards, I'm like, wow, wasn't that fun, honey? And she said, well, yeah. And I said, you don't sound very excited about it. She says, well, if you'd have invited, 3 or 4 couples, it would have been fine with me.
Right.
That was a mic drop moment for me.
Ooh.
Not
Yeah.
you, but a microphone
I,
drop.
I understood. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That, hey, not everybody works the way I do, whether it's extrovert, introvert, or whether it's
Right.
an appreciation language or a love language or something like that. What keeps us, Mike, as people leaders, from asking those kinds of questions?
I mean, look, I think we're busy. I think we're focused on ourselves. These days people are working more remotely, the pace of things.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't want to be nosy. There's a bunch of reasons. Good, and I think with good intention, we want to give people their space. We want to respect their privacy.
Mm.
It can sometimes be awkward, right? There's that awkward moment of you ask the question, so there's a lot of things that we do. A mentor of mine years ago, Joey, said to me, Mike, what stands between you and the kind of relationships you really want to have with people is usually a 10-minute sweaty palm conversation you're too afraid to have.
Mm.
And he said, if you get good at those 10-minute sweaty palm conversations, you'll have fantastic relationships. You'll build trust. You'll resolve conflicts. You'll get to know people who are different than you. You'll give feedback.
Wow.
You'll get feedback. You'll talk about the elephant in the room. He said, but if you do like most of us and you avoid those conversations because they can sometimes be awkward or they're a little messy at first, He said, then you end up being a victim of who you work with, who you live with. And I think there's a fear sometimes to engage in that sweaty palm conversation because it doesn't always go well and it sometimes is uncomfortable.
Well, and as human beings, I think our our bent is towards imagining the worst things that are going to happen
Of
in those
course.
sweaty palm conversations. So it becomes a mental mindset game. Not that you
Yeah.
have to sing kumbaya, not that you have to be a mental ninja of mind tricks or anything, but just okay, that might happen. But what if it goes well? If I can just ask myself that question, what if it goes
Right.
well? What's the best thing that could happen in this
Totally.
conversation? And so then I'm able to step in and have that crucial conversation. Let me ask you a question. What if the key to growing your work culture hides in plain sight? Take the free Work Positive Culture Assessment to discover it. Get insights in less than 4 minutes that transform your culture so you grow people and profits. You just answer 13 simple questions and discover your culture stage, strengths, and personalized next steps. Get your free aha culture moment at workpositive.today. Go to workpositive.today right now. Mike Robbins is my guest on this episode of the Work Positive Podcast. Hey, go to the show notes, unless you're on the Peloton or something, then just keep listening, but they'll be in the show notes for you there. 3 TEDx links to talks that only 2.5 million people have viewed. Who knew? Mike-Robbins.com is a website. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. And as I mentioned a moment ago, the links to the 2 Amazon books. So what are some other challenges that we as people leaders face today in creating the kind of work positive culture we're talking about here, Mike?
I mean, look, I think we're dealing with, several generations in the workforce that's tricky, right? We tend to relate better to people around our own age because we have more relatables. There's that challenge. Again, I think the pace of work, the pace of change, the way we utilize technology. I mean, it's amazing all the technology we have, but it's, someone wants it this way, someone wants it that way. We're using this platform, that platform. I mean, it's great. But in some ways, my wife and I look at each other and we say, can't it just be 1985 for like a week? I just want to slow down and catch up, because it's like,
Let me know how that works out for you, buddy.
yeah. But I mean, and I, and I'm somebody who, lives close to the heart of Silicon Valley where all this
You do.
technology is being created.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's a lot to keep up with. So I think those things can all get in the way. And the reality, again, back to the generational piece, most of us, again, not just because if we're the same age as someone else, it doesn't mean we're the same. We could have been raised very differently. But I think sometimes, the bigger spread there is in age difference, the harder it can be for us to relate to each other and understand, oh, people are raised differently, or maybe people are from a different part of the country or a different part of the world. And you realize, oh, wow. It's beautiful that the internet connects us with the whole world. It's also challenging because now we realize, oh my goodness, if I work in a company and we all live in the same town and we all show up at work in person and we sit in the same room and we have similar backgrounds, it's just not that we're all going to get along necessarily, but it's easier for us to relate to each other if we're spread out over time and space and the team is very diverse. It just poses more potential challenge.
Oh, it really does, because we all used to live in a much, much smaller world, even prior to 1985, right? And we all carried the same black lunch pail with the same thermos inside of it and the same sandwiches inside of it. But now it's like, oh, by the way, salsa outsells ketchup by a big number, right? So, I mean,
For sure.
we really are in such a multiplex world. And that's where the VUCA comes in and frightens us. So then we start analyzing and we get paralyzed and we're afraid to open our mouths and say anything.
Yep.
How do we work as people leaders towards finding the commonality of our human experience so that we can unlock all that human potential?
Well, and this is where I think, as I've done more research around authenticity, there's a really important aspect of it that has to do with vulnerability. And I think of it, the metaphor I use when I'm talking about vulnerability is a bit of an overused metaphor, but it's the iceberg. It's like, can we lower the waterline on the iceberg a bit? And that doesn't mean we necessarily have to share all of our personal life and deep, dark secrets. You can be a very private person, a very introverted person, and still operate with quite a bit of vulnerability. Sometimes it might look like, again, as I was saying before, those sweaty palm conversations, saying to someone, they don't know really what to say, or, I don't know how to do this, or I'm confused. Because when we lower the waterline on the iceberg, Joey, even if we're really different, again, let's say we're a different age and a different
Yeah.
race and a different gender and a different background, and we have
Mhm.
different skill sets. Someone could be a salesperson, someone else is more of an engineer. The further
Mm.
down below the waterline we go, the more we get to some pretty basic human emotions, right? Joy, pain, gratitude, sadness, like the things that make us human. And
Mhm.
like when one of the things we know about vulnerability is the natural human response to vulnerability is empathy. So like when I have to
Yes.
have a sweaty palm conversation with another human and I'm afraid to have the conversation, one of the things that I have trained myself to do, not as some weird Jedi mind trick, but just I will
Mhm.
often say, I'm feeling scared to have this conversation with you.
Mm.
And just
Mm.
that alone, that acknowledgement of I'm concerned that this might not go well. I've been worried about this, or I've been avoid some version of that. What I'm letting the other person know is like, first of all, I'm human. Second of all, I trust you enough to be vulnerable with you. And third of all, I'm trusting that that other human being, unless they're literally a sociopath, knows what it feels like to feel concerned or worried to have a conversation. So they will right there, we will at least have that piece of common ground, human to human,
Mm.
that we know what that shared experience is like. And then it's more likely that the conversation is going to go well, or at least get somewhere somewhat productive. Whether, instead of me avoiding it or coming in, with all of my reasons for why they're wrong and why I'm right, that's probably not going to end up with some kind of solution.
Mm. Man, I absolutely love that. So just relating to each other on a human level and being
Yeah.
vulnerable instead of buffaloing somebody with BS, you know?
Right.
We've been evaluating your performance and blah blah blah. I mean, God
Yeah.
knows who wants to have that conversation, right? But
Nobody.
instead, there's something I need to talk with you about, and I'm not exactly sure how to approach it. I need your help. So, when we come out of this, it's going to be a constructive conversation.
Yeah.
Join me in that. Yeah, I absolutely love that. And that way we don't have to buffalo them with BS, right? So, in creating a positive work culture, let's say that we've done that, we've done the kinds of things that you and I've been talking about exactly right here. How do I then communicate this kind of culture to top talent, to someone that I'm interested in joining our team, but yet recognize that this kind of culture we're talking about, it's not unicorn status, but it's a little rare. So how
Right.
can I, with authenticity, really talk with them about this so that they're attracted to join our team?
I mean, look, I do think the words matter. I think the values matter, the like having them written, having them on the wall. But as we all know, it's more about living them and embodying them. So I
Mm,
often say, look, people are going to pick up on the culture as you're interviewing them or as you're reaching out to attract talent. They're going to get a sense from you personally, from the reputation that the team or the company has. And it depends how big or small are we talking about.
mhm.
But a lot of times, I mean, nowadays people can find, whether it's Glassdoor or other places, they can go
Yep.
online
Yep.
and find stuff out. They will reach out, they will look on LinkedIn, they'll look in other places. So you kind of are who you are.
Yep.
And, it's we can say we're one thing, but the reality of who we are personally, but also collectively, tends to shine through. A friend of mine who has done a lot of research on customer service. He works a lot in the hospitality industry, and he talks a lot about like the authenticity of the greeting that you get when you walk into a hotel or so,
Mm,
you get a sense of the culture, because it's one thing
really
if they
true.
read the script and they do the thing, but it's
Yeah.
another thing if you tell, oh, this person really loves working here, and
Yep.
that is exuded from them, and that tells you something about their boss and their team and the culture within that place.
And we all want to do business with people we like, whether it's as a customer or whether it's a member of the team. So if I
Exactly.
get, hey, they told me to say welcome to Shea Mike's, for instance, welcome to Shea Mike's, if I get that,
Right.
or hey, welcome to Shea Mike's, right? And
Right.
like you honestly like working here, it's going to make a difference. And it seems like if I can meet the team, you as a recruiter, and I really prefer attraction to recruitment, but anyway,
Right.
uh, but if you see yourself as a recruiter, you could just be selling me the sizzle.
Right.
And
And
so
and
if I get to meet
yeah.
the team, that's the stake, right?
Totally. You get to see it and feel it for real. And the truth is, I have a mentor that used to always say to me, Mike, if you're trying to prove it, you don't believe it. So the more like we can talk
Oh,
to and
wow.
about the culture, but I think people are more going to sense it. If we spend the whole time, we have a great culture and everybody really cares and we believe in this but I mean, then it's like, okay, well, great. Here's our value statement, a mission statement, and these are our but if it comes through in the conversations,
Yeah.
that's going to sell it better than us telling them how great the culture is.
Methinks he doth protest too much. That's what I'm thinking.
Exactly.
Talking about all that.
Exactly.
So Mike Robbins is my guest. Man, we could talk for days. I absolutely love talking with you. Um, Mike Robbins is my guest in this episode of the Work Positive Podcast. So when I go to mike-robbins.com, what am I going to find?
Lots of information about me. No, I mean, my 3 TED Talks are up there and 5 books
Okay.
and, links to podcast episodes. And,
Oh, sweet.
there's lots of, I mean, I've been writing articles for 20 years and we've
Hmm.
had this current podcast for the last decade almost. So there's lots of content on there and
Cool.
information about, the work that I do and that we do with our clients.
Right. So wherever you're listening to this podcast, you can search for We're All in This Together. Isn't that the name of the podcast? Yeah.
Yep,
Search for that because both of us are heard wherever finer podcasts are heard, right?
exactly.
I absolutely love it. All right. So Work Positive Nation always wants to know from my guests, so Mike Robbins. We've talked about a lot, but I'm after your one thing. What's one thing you would encourage Work Positive Nation to do starting today to create the kind of positive work culture we're talking about?
Look, I think one thing that we can all do to create a more positive work culture is to appreciate people. Just let them know that they're valued, that they're cared about. There's a difference between recognition, which is about performance, and appreciation, which is really about people. So if we can focus on the people, we can value and appreciate people all the time, irrespective of performance. But letting people know that they're valued, they're seen, they're heard, they're cared about, that goes a long way.
Hmm. Man, it does, doesn't it? Thanks for that distinction between recognition and appreciation because one is earned and the other is bestowed.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. Mike Robbins has been my guest on this episode of the Work Positive Podcast. Man, I certainly am better for this conversation. I know Work Positive Nation is as well. Go right now to mike-robbins.com. You can check out his TED Talks there, pick up his books, and all that information's in the show notes too. So, Mike, thanks so much for taking time away from your amazing wife and 2 lovely daughters. And we're grateful for this time with you today, buddy. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so grateful you joined our conversation about creating positive work cultures that grow people and profits. Connect with me directly on LinkedIn today. Just search for Dr. Joey Fawcett, or you can click the link in your show notes. When you send your connection request, mention you're a Work Positive Podcast listener because I want to give you a free digital copy of my Work Positive Team Edition book. It's a $19.95 value, but I want to share it with you free because it contains practical strategies that I personally use with clients to transform toxic work environments into thriving cultures. We explore in that book how to create a positive work culture, and we do so again in every episode of this podcast. Our LinkedIn connection allows you and me to directly talk about your specific challenges, so feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn. I personally read and respond to all those messages because I genuinely care about your work positive success. So go to LinkedIn and let's connect. Remember to mention you're a podcast listener to receive your free Work Positive Team Edition book. I look forward to seeing you on our next episode of the Work Positive Podcast.